The Wonderful World of Darklords. Report 36. Gravity Falls. After the towering buildings and bustling activity of Wyvern, the rural nature of Gravity Falls was even more evident. Not that this was unwelcome. The familiar scent of evergreens on the summer breeze was a blessed relief after my visits to various cities, caverns, God's forsaken desert hellscapes, and even the beautiful but exotic jungle of Paradise Falls. There was, quite simply, a hominess to Gravity Falls. The people, while a tad strange, seemed friendly enough, and in truth their quirks put me even more at ease. Had everything seemed too blandly idyllic, I would have suspected an Encanto situation. Through a peculiar twist of fate, this home-like quality was only increased when I encountered someone I had once known from Salem. Ernest had decided to travel to Gravity Falls, of all places, and become a ranger in order to help any who became lost in its massive forests. He and I had hardly been friends in Salem. Our lengthiest interaction had been when he had tried to steal candy from me as a child, which is an apt encapsulation of his overall character at the time. But the sight of a familiar face in strange surroundings can do a remarkable job of smoothing away the past's rougher edges. Ernest not only proved to be a valuable guide during my stay in Gravity Falls, but also an exemplar of the marks the domain leaves upon its denizens. At first I assumed that the townsfolk were odd because the land attracted the eccentric. However, the changes I saw in Ernest's behavior made it clear that strangeness was an effect of living in Gravity Falls rather than a cause. My own experiences within the town's borders gave me a distinct sense of madness lurking around the outskirts of my mind, searching for a way in. What's more, I believe that madness is no mere miasma surrounding the domain, but an intelligent, malevolent being. The Lord. It was nigh impossible to piece together information about Bill Cipher, the entity whose symbol I had seen in my research. Because he seemed to be an eldritch being of terrible power, I predicted that he would be either a god or a bogeyman to the people of Gravity Falls. To my surprise, no one there had ever heard of him. In fact, their very lack of knowledge eventually painted as vivid a picture as any account of local mythology would have done. While some people reacted to my questions about him with honest confusion, others dismissed me with a hysterical laugh or a disproportionately angry denial. My old acquaintance Ernest, for his part, stared off into space for a solid minute before continuing our conversation as though I had never asked a question. It almost made me think of... It was not until several days into my time at Gravity Falls that I found a secret door in the Museum of History, which led into a bunker filled with minor occult paraphernalia. A werewolf's paw here, a hat of vermin there, and what appeared to be a head that never stopped screaming. Of far more note than these curiosities, however, were a handful of diaries and records from some 30 years ago, which I have enclosed. Given the layers of dust upon them, they will hardly be missed. They belonged to one Fiddleford McGucket, a startling provenance for anything remotely lucid, as McGucket holds the dubious distinction of being the town eccentric of Gravity Falls. They describe an event called Weirdmageddon, in which Bill Cipher, a god or fiend or powerful aberration, broke free from a portal that bound him with the help of an acolyte named Stanford Pines. From what I could piece together, Cipher's prison was a plane that was not our own, but was closely connected to Gravity Falls, giving him a measure of influence over the dreams and minds of its residents. These diary entries chronicled 2 days of madness and nightmares before abruptly ending with a vague reference to Stanford's sacrifice. Other records in the bunker corroborated McGucket's account, but there was absolutely no mention of Weirdmageddon after that 2-day stretch, suggesting that the residents of Gravity Falls forgot about it the moment it was over. However, I also found a handful of dream journals from the intervening 30 years that mentioned Bill Cipher or the events of Weirdmageddon, as well as artwork that reflected the madness of the period, all locked away in this basement where prying eyes could not see them. Weirdmageddon is over, and Bill Cipher is gone, but the influence of both remains. Obviously, I could not expect McGucket to give me a clear answer about anything, but when I asked other residents of Gravity Falls about some of the disturbing artwork or mad poetry within the bunker that bore their own signatures, they laughed me off. At first I attributed this forgetfulness to trauma. Perhaps Weirdmageddon was too horrific for the human mind to hold. However, that explanation did not account for the secret bunker. or the way the authorities began to follow me after I asked too many questions. Someone is trying to make sure Bill Cipher remains forgotten. The land. Although the actual town of Gravity Falls can barely be called a village, the valley that holds it is large enough to contain massive swaths of virgin forest. Woodsmen who have been harvesting lumber for generations still have not explored the valley in its entirety. On the other hand, perhaps they have, and they simply do not remember the exploration. As mentioned, the residents of Gravity Falls are uniformly odd, and perhaps the strangest thing about them is their blatant refusal to acknowledge the existence of magic or supernatural creatures, despite the fact that the forest is crawling with a number and variety of fae, aberrations, and other beings that could put Tempest or the Queenswood to shame. Ernest told me repeatedly that while hags and dark magic may have been a threat in Salem, there was absolutely nothing like that in Gravity Falls. Later, he and I traveled to one of those unexplored stretches of forest, where we encountered gibbering mouthers who attempted to transfix us by babbling an impossibly catchy song that asked why we were acting so cray-cray. We managed to dispatch them, and this finally forced Ernest to acknowledge that Gravity Falls had magical creatures after all. The next day, he had forgotten the entire incident, and was once again encouraging me to settle in the village for my own safety. It is disturbing to think that Gravity Falls is as dangerous as any other domain, yet its inhabitants blithely walk into the jaws of that danger because they cannot recognize its existence. Beyond the presence of bizarre creatures, Gravity Falls is a positive hotbed of wild magic. My wild magic surges were even more frequent within its borders, but I found I was able to control them with more success than I had experienced in any other domain. When I felt it building, I was able to shape it into a spell rather than watching as it discharged randomly. Which is not to say that it no longer discharged randomly, mind, only that I gained some benefit from it. Perhaps being so surrounded by this energy, I was like a child whose parents threw them into a body of water to teach them to swim. Fortunate for me, then, that I was able to swim instead of drowning. This was not the only effect that the town had upon me, however, for I acquired an irksome tendency towards sleepwalking during my stay. At one point, I awoke from troubled dreams of... Well, what I dreamt of is irrelevant. In any case, I awoke to find that instead of lying in my bed, I was sitting at my desk, heart pounding and skin drenched in sweat. On most mornings, I found objects in places where I had not left them the night before. Whether I had moved them in my sleep, or whether they had moved on their own due to one of Gravity Falls' many uncanny quirks, I cannot say. I had expected every site of magical significance to be within the forest, given the town's aggressive desire for normalcy. However, my interest was piqued when I learned of a combined museum and shop called the Mystery Shack, which served to separate bored merchants from their coppers while they waited to pick up their next lumber shipment. The Mystery Shack was owned by a man named Stanford Pines, a name that I recognized as belonging to Bill Cipher's acolyte. This clearly warranted further investigation. My conversation with Pines quickly led me to suspect either that the names were a coincidence, or that his memory had been impacted as seriously as that of every other inhabitant of Gravity Falls. Not only did he evince no greater knowledge of the town's secrets than anyone else, but he knew nothing whatsoever about magic. The Mystery Shack primarily dealt in colorful gewgaws, macabre but mundane trinkets, and bits of taxidermy sewn together to make imaginary monsters. But mixed in with the chaff were items of genuine power. A ring of spell storing, a spell book, and an orb covered in conjuration sigils so powerful that I could not begin to make sense of them, to name a few. Pines treated all of his wares as though they were of equal value. No, that is not entirely true. Much of the false taxidermy held pride of place over the true magic items. Moreover, the magical energies within the Mystery Shack were not limited to this handful of items. At times, the sound, or rather the not sound, that I associate with wild magic positively hummed through its floorboards. When I assumed gaseous form to seep between them and investigate, I found a metal-lined sublevel without a single crack for me to penetrate. Pines may be a sham, but the magic of the Mystery Shack is very real. dread possibilities. On my last evening in Gravity Falls, I made a final stop at the Mystery Shack to find its shelves nearly empty. Pines was positively humming with excitement as he counted up his gold from the day.
Oh, hey, kid, listen, if you're looking to buy today, you're out of luck. I don't know what all those Agrabanians were looking for in here, but man, they buy anything labeled magic. I had my niece covering stuff in glitter all day, and it was flying off the shelves.
Although most of the items the Agrabanians had bought were the Mystery Shack's usual fare, glass gems and other bric-a-brac, scrolls that were yellowed with tea and marked with a child's idea of glyphs, pieces of dead animals sewn together to make exotic magical creatures. I was dismayed to look over the missing inventory and see that they had bought the ring of spell storing, which Pines' niece had apparently slathered with gold paint beforehand. I could have told him, but he seemed so pleased with himself. Perhaps before my departure in the morning I will have some final breakthrough concerning the Mystery Shack. For now, I must simply turn in for the night and hope that I do not wake myself by walking face first into a wall.
Well, if it isn't my favorite skeleton. I'm kidding, you're my third favorite skeleton. After Moldy Joe and that deaf guy you got hanging out in your backyard. He's bonkers, but you gotta admit he's got style. I love your taste in Minions, by the way. Been a fan of this one for years. I watch your nightmares every October. They're hilarious. What's that I smell? Wild magic. Spicy. Didn't know you had it in your bone bag, and now I like her even more. But enough small talk. Let's get down to business. Look, Boneback, it seems to me you're as sick of this one-horse demi-plane as I am, so let's help each other. We both know I could blow this whole place wide open if I could get someone in a physical form, but I'm having a hard over time getting minions willing to make deals. Everyone in this hick town is too narrow-minded to handle how real I am. You know what they say, if you can't deal with me at my you don't deserve me at my You've always got a couple spare meat sacks hanging around, so how about sending me over some cultists? Just get them to agree to my deal and do my summoning ritual, and bang! We'll pop this place like a soap bubble and the real party can get started. You'll get your freedom and I'll get... Don't worry about what I'll get. So what do you say? It's a win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win- goes with you and kids. Put all your hopes on her at the last minute, you'll lose her head. Get it? It's funny because that's how your son died. How about the rest of you out there? Anyone want to make a deal? Join my Patreon, so to speak. Come on, some of you have been saying you wanted to see me since season 2. Time to put your money where your mouth is. If you do, I'll put your mouth where your money is. That's only one of the perks I offer my supporters, along with exclusive non-Euclidean content and movie commentaries. That's right, agree to my terms and conditions and you'll hear my comments on every movie you've ever watched screamed directly into your brain. So how about it? Smash that subscribe button! Anyway, kid, thanks for letting me use your Wi-Fi. Ciao! Good luck with that custody battle. My advice, pick the dad that gives you the most birthday presents. Time is an illusion, reality is a hologram, 4th edition was the best one yet!
This was written here when I awoke. It is not my handwriting, and I have no ink in this color. This color is not a color. Parting thoughts. I could say that I did not read what Bill Cipher wrote, but you would know it for a lie. After all, you have remarked on my curiosity in the past. I presume, at least I hope, that you have no intention of accepting his deal, assuming that a being as mad as Bill can even have an accurate picture of what you want. And as for the things he said about your past, I'm sorry that I read them. I know you cherish your privacy, and they were none of my concern. Had I any idea of what he had written, I would not have read it.
Excellent. I will ensure you do not remember a thing.
Wait, what? No! Wait, Jensen, please! I don't... I don't... Apologies, I lost the thread of my thoughts. As I was saying, perhaps you will be able to unriddle the symbols that Bill Cipher vomited into my journal. When I tried, even comprehend languages returned nothing but gibberish. I checked with Eldritch Sight to assure myself that he had not left some kind of trap or curse, and while it seems innocuous, anyone who could put those words in my journal could also disguise their auras. It is just as well that I had already intended to leave Gravity Falls today, for the local authorities informed me that I had been asking too many questions and was no longer welcome in town. As I held my Mist Talisman, a key containing a reservoir of indigo liquid, I reflected upon how rude they were. I'd never actually broken any of their stupid laws. In front of them. Ah, farts, I got caught. Regards, D.
My little scholar must be aggrieved and enraged knowing she, while sound asleep, wrote a message she was unable to comprehend upon waking. Rest assured, my dear, what Bill Cipher wrote in your hand was nothing of import, and as nonsensical as Bill himself. To appease your near insatiable curiosity, however, I shall summarize what it conveyed. He desires a portal into our world, and without an ounce of grace nor subtlety, attempted to enlist my assistance. Cipher is an entity of pure chaos that wants nothing more than to fashion the entirety of existence into his abhorrent likeness. Fear not, I would never degrade myself into summoning such a creature, let alone aiding in his designs. Though I can sympathize with the citizens of Gravity Falls and their desire to forget every trace of Bill Cipher, that Bilker is not worth remembering, I share my scholar's suspicions. Magical memory anomalies must account for some amount of their collective amnesia. At times, magically altering the memories of another may keep them safe from outside forces, but the extreme to which it is done in Gravity Falls may ultimately have the opposite effect. It is, after all, only a matter of time before what happened 30 years ago is truly forgotten. It is fortunate, however, that Bill Cipher has no concept of the word patience. McGuckett's journals are quite enlightening, and I thank you for delivering them, along with your research notes. Although I confess I am interested more in the formal contents of the Mystery Shack. There is a powerful magical item from Agrabah that has been lost for some time. It would appear as nothing more than common, cheap junk to the mundane eye, blending in perfectly with Stanford Pine's wares. Did my little scholar happen upon such an item when perusing the shelves before they were all but ransacked by Jafar's minions? Bill Cipher, I shall now address you and you alone. I am not in the habit of giving warnings twice, so listen carefully. Your influence is in the world of dreams, and I do not sleep. If you ever attempt to utilize one of mine again, I will ensure you never set a single angle beyond the boundaries of Gravity Falls. I know your weakness, Bill, and I am more than capable of using it against you.
This has been The Wonderful World of Darklords. We have no affiliation with Disney or Wizards of the Coast. All music recordings used in this episode are in the public domain and were obtained through museopen.org. Titles and links are in the show notes. Dialogue for Yensid was written by Aslan Rex himself, who you can follow on Tumblr at Darklord Aslan. The Wonderful World of Darklords logo was designed by Haylight Jones. You can find links to their work in the show notes. If you'd like to support the show, look for us on patreon.com or find our tip jar on Red Circle. Thanks for listening.
Yo, Mabel, dude, I had the weirdest dream last night. I was just sitting in my room watching a skeleton in a crown yelling at a triangle. I wonder what it means. Is it a reflection of my conflicted feelings toward my father? Is my father the triangle? Am I the triangle? Or do I just want nachos for breakfast? The human heart is the true mystery of Gravity Falls. Anyway, how about those nachos, dog?